Okay, so that is the ideal gas formula. It's used in physics, and you don't need to know that. That's not a big deal. But we're going to take that formula, that physics formula, and we're going to solve it for T. Who knows what I would do to solve that equation for T? Okay, how do I get it by itself? Okay, divide by, so I have multiplication here and here, so to undo multiplication, you would do division. So for the sake of your notes, I'm going to rewrite this. PV equals nRT, and now I'm going to divide by n and r to get the t by itself, n capital R. So that means this cancels with this cancels with this, and now I've got t by itself. T is equal to PV over nR. Okay? And that's all there is to it, and you have to type it in your thing just like that. Capital P, capital V divided by, you'll do the fraction thing first, and then put the PV on the top, the NR on the bottom, okay? Everybody okay with that problem?
Yeah.
All right, great. All right, example 2. Example 2, let's take the formula C is equal to 2 pi r, and let's solve it for r. Okay, we're going to solve that one for r. Anybody know what that formula is? That's circumference. You should know that one. That one's a geometry formula. Circumference is equal to 2 pi r. And you want to get r by itself, so that means I need to do what? Simply divide by 2 pi. So if I divide by 2 pi, the 2 and the pi cancel, and now the r is by itself. R is equal to circumference divided by 2 pi. Okay, everybody okay with that? All right, example 3. Let's say we have V is equal to 1/3 S squared H. Okay, V is equal to 1/3 S squared H. And they want you to solve it for H. Solve that thing for H. How could I solve that for H? Start by multiplying by 3 and getting rid of the fractions, right? I would definitely do that. So if we multiply both sides by 3, so taking both sides times 3, what happens? What happens over here when I take 3 times all of this? It's all one term. Yeah, 3 cancels with that one, right? And I'm left with S squared H equals 3V. Remember, I'm trying to get H by itself. So what should I do to get H by itself? Divide by S squared, right? The H is times the S squared. It's the H that you want to get by itself. So I'm going to divide by an S squared. So if I divide by S squared, this cancels with this, and I'm left with H equals 3V over S squared. Is everybody good with that? Okay. Now, if I was solving for the S squared, I would have divided by H and then square rooted. Okay. This lesson won't require you to square root. That's in the next lesson. Okay. All right. So next example. Let's solve C equals 5/9 times F minus 32. And I want to solve that for F. Anybody know what formula that is? It's how you convert Celsius to Fahrenheit, okay, or vice versa. Okay, so I want to solve this thing for Fahrenheit. What should I do first?
Get rid of, or multiply by 9.
Okay, so get rid of the 5/9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what, or even get rid of the fraction. How would I get rid of the 9? Multiply both sides by a 9. So if I multiply both sides by a 9, I'm going to have 9C equals 5 times F minus 32. Okay, what now? Okay, you can distribute. If you want to divide it by 5 now, you could even do that. And in this case, I would probably do that because I'm trying to get F by itself anyway. And when I distribute, then I'm putting a 5 on the F. I'm trying to get the F by itself anyway. So let's divide both sides by 5. And then I end up with this. So see if that makes sense to you. So here I multiplied by 9. Now I'm dividing by 5. Okay, how am I going to get this f by itself now?
You just,
Add a 32. So if I add a 32 to both sides, now I'm going to have 9/5 c plus 32 is equal to f. Okay, and they will have, on the screen it'll look like this. It'll say f equals, and then there'll be a blank to type in your answer. Is everybody okay with that example? Okay. All right, next example, let's have this formula. V squared is equal to V naught squared plus 2ax. So this is a physics formula, and this little 0 down here means what's the velocity at time 0, and they just call it V naught. Velocity squared equals initial velocity squared, meaning what was the velocity at time equals 0. So if you hear me say V naught, it simply means initial velocity. It does not matter that you understand that. All you have to be able to do is solve this thing for either a or x. Okay, they're going to ask you to solve it for a or for x. We'll do it for a. So how would I get a by itself? Minus V naught squared. Okay, take this and subtract it from both sides. And so then I'm going to have V squared minus V naught squared equals 2ax. Okay, divide by 2x. Okay, so I'm going to, for the purpose of your notes, rewrite this. V squared minus V naught squared equals 2ax. And I'm going to take everything and divide by 2x, because I'm trying to get the a by itself, 2x. So instead of doing it 3 times, I'm just going to do it once over here. And so now the 2's cancel, and the x's cancel, and now I do have the a by itself. So a will equal v squared minus v naught squared all over 2x. Now, when you're typing in v naught, you don't have to do a subscript. You just, if you go to the keypad, you know that little keypad in there that's got the fraction thing in it, it's got a v naught symbol in there that you can use, so you don't have to actually worry about trying to type in a subscript. Does that make sense? So if you just go to the keypad, you can access this from there. All right? So you're going to do one big fraction. So practicing is important in this lesson just for getting them typed in correctly. Okay? Is everybody okay with that one? Okay? Nice thing is the problems that you do in the homework aren't going to be much different at all. Some of them will be exactly the same as mine. Okay? So that doesn't happen too often, but because there's only so many ways you can do these formulas, some of them will be very similar to what I'm doing here. Okay, so next one, we have area equals half, parentheses, capital B plus lowercase b times h. And we're going to do this one a couple of times and solve for different variables. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to solve this thing for h. Then I'll go back and we'll rework the problem solving for a capital B. So how do you think I should solve this thing for h? Yeah. Multiply by 2 on both sides so that I can get rid of this 2 right here. When I take this side times 2, I just get a 2a. When I multiply this side times 2, it is all one term. So this thing is all one term. When I multiply it by a 2, that simply cancels out this 2. Okay, so if you want to rewrite that, that's fine. Showing that step, you can. But maybe I should do that for your notes. Let me see. So if I were to rewrite this, a equals 1/2 capital B plus lowercase b times h. I'm multiplying both sides by 2. So that would be the next step in your notes to show these cancel. And then I've got 2a equals capital B plus lowercase b times h. Okay, now remember, I'm trying to get h by itself. Okay, so what now? Okay, so h is going to be equal to 2a over capital B plus lowercase b. I got it by itself, just like they requested, so that is my answer. Anybody know what that formula is for? That's the area of a trapezoid, you're right. Typically, a lot of math classes would call that B1 and B2, okay? But they're using a capital B and a lowercase b. Everybody okay with that? Okay? All right, so I'm going to do the exact same formula, but this time, instead of solving it for h, I'm going to solve it for uppercase b. So start off with the same formula. A equals 1/2 capital B plus lowercase b times h. Okay? All right, so probably want to start the same way, right? Getting rid of the fraction. So multiply both sides by a 2, and I get 2a is equal to, when I multiply this, that goes away. When I multiply it times 2, and I've got uppercase b times lowercase b times h. Keep in mind, I'm trying to solve for uppercase b. This is the one I need to get by itself. How am I going to do that? Okay, divide by an h first, right? Get rid of this h. It's a multiply by h, so I'm going to divide by h to get rid of that. So if I were to divide both sides by an h, I now have 2a over h is equal to capital B plus lowercase b. So now, to get that b by itself, what am I going to do? I'm trying to get the uppercase. And of course, if you were trying to solve for this one, then you would move this one over, right? So my uppercase b is going to be 2a over h minus b. All I did was take this and move it over there to get this by itself. And so now it looks like this. Is everybody okay with that? Okay? Those are called abstract equations, where you have a lot of variables and you're trying to solve for one. Allie, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay?
Why did that? I say, is that supposed to be a
Oh,
lowercase?
yep,
That's
you're
why I was
right.
confused.
Thank you. I knew I was seeing something on your face.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, you're right. That should have been a lowercase b there. Always call me on those so we can get those worked out. Don't wait till 3 problems later and try and figure it out. Okay, everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
All right. So that's all of that type. It says find 3 consecutive integers whose sum is 576. Well, first of all, you got to know, what are consecutive integers? Right after another, what are integers? Okay, specifically, no fractions, no decimals, but they can be positive or negative. Okay, anytime you hear the word integer, no fractions, no decimals, and they can be positive or negative, and 0 can be included. So I went 3 numbers right next to each other that add up to 576. Okay, well, we could practice, just trial and error, right? You could start trying to find numbers that add up to that. Kind of a big number, so that would be a little bit difficult. So if I know 3 numbers are consecutive, and I call the first one n, okay, let's say I call the first one n, what would the next one be? N plus 1 more, right? So there's the first number. The second number is n plus 1 more, because I don't know what they are, so I'm just going to call the first one n. Does that make sense? Okay. How about the last one? 3 consecutive numbers. This one's n. The next one's 1 more. The last one would be 2 more than the original, right? So the original first number, this one's 1 more. The last one is going to be 2 more. So those are my 3 numbers. My 3 consecutive numbers, n plus 1, and n plus 2. Does that make sense? Okay? All right, now I want to sum them up. So that means I want to add those together. And what is the sum of those 3 supposed to be? 576. Okay, well, that's just an equation. I learned how to solve equations like that in Algebra 1. What can I do to solve for n? Okay, how many n's do I have? So I've got 3n plus, there's a 1 and there's a 2, so plus 3 equals 576, right? Okay, well, how do I solve that equation? Subtract the 3, so that's what? 573. And then calculator, what's 573 divided by 3?
191.
Okay, so that is a representation for n, 191. Okay, so 191 is n, so what's the next one? 192, 193. And if you want to check your work, just add them up and see if they actually add up to 576. Does that make sense? Okay, now, on your calculator, I'm going to show you a shortcut. Take your calculator, take 576 and divide it by 3. What do you get?
192.
Yeah, you get the one in the middle when you do that, right? And so then you just add 1, subtract 1. Okay? Now, I don't really care for you to know that shortcut just for learning the math, but when you're on the ACT, that shortcut's pretty helpful, right? Okay, ACT is a timed test. You want to be as fast as you can. You just learned a valuable shortcut, okay? Same with Mathletes, if that's ever on a Mathletes test, okay? All right, so example 8 is the exact same type of problem except for what? Okay, it's odd. So give me some examples of consecutive odd numbers. 3, 5, and 7. 5, 7, 9. 15, 17, 19, right? Consecutive odd numbers. So for this one, instead of having n plus 1, what do you think the second number should be? N plus 2. Because think about if you have a 3, how many more is the next odd number? 2 more, right? If you have an 11, where's the next odd number? 2 up. So I know it's weird because it says consecutive odd, but you're actually putting even numbers here on the end. Okay, how about the third number? N plus 4. And what are those supposed to add up to?
561, sorry.
They're supposed to add up to 561. Okay, so when I add these up, that would be 3n plus 6. Do you agree? Using a little different notation this time just to give you options. So I'm adding these up. That's the first one, the second one, and the last one. 3n plus 6 is supposed to be 561. Okay? And then I simply solve that. 3n plus 6 equals 561. The first thing I'm going to want to do is subtract what? Subtract a 6, and I get 555. And then divide by 3, and I get what? 185. So that's my first number. And I'm looking for consecutive odd numbers. 187, 189. And I would always check these to make sure they add up to this, because a lot of people forget. By the time they get to the end of the problem, they forget that this said odd, and they write down 185, then they go 186, 187. I hate for you to miss problems like that just because you forgot that word. Okay? So be super cautious and careful on those. Let's try our shortcut again. Take the 561 and divide it by 3. 187 gives you the middle number again. So if you know you're doing odds, you just go one odd number in front, one odd number in back. Okay? Does that make sense? So simply divide by 3. Okay, next one is the same type of problem, but this time it's even integers. So let's see if this one would be represented any differently. If I call the first one n, the next even number is going to be how many numbers away?
2.
So that one is also going to be an n plus 2. And the last one will be an n plus 4. So when you do the consecutive evens and the consecutive odds, the notation is exactly the same. When you do the integers, it's just plus 1 and plus 2. Okay, so what are these supposed to add up to?
354.
So 3n plus 6 needs to be 354. So subtract 6, and I get 3n equals what? 348. And 348 divided by 3, 116. So my first even number is 116, then 118, then 120. Okay, divide by 3, see if the shortcut works. 354 divided by 3. Okay, it does. So if you divide by 3, you'll get the 118, go one even number in front, one even number behind. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so we have 2 more examples to do. See if I can get this to scroll. There you go, now you can see it. Okay, so example 10. We have 2 brothers, David and Charles, that each inherit $21,000. David invests his inheritance in a savings account with an annual return of 3.1%, while Charles invests his inheritance in a CD paying 5% annually. How much more money than David does Charles have after 1 year? Okay? So this is a simple interest problem. It does not talk about compound interest at all, so you assume it's simple interest. Does anybody know the simple interest formula?
It's like
PRT. I equals PRT. Okay? And what do these stand for?
Interest, principal, rate, and time.
Correct. So rate would mean the interest rate. What does the word principal mean? It's the starting amount, the amount of money you originally put in, and in this case, that's going to be $21,000, right? Anybody want to take a stab at which account's going to draw the most money?
CD.
Why the CD?
Because the savings account, I don't know.
It's because it's a higher interest rate. Okay, the CD is drawing 5%, the other one's only drawing 3.1, right? 5% is going to draw you more interest than 3.1%, right? Okay, so we're going to figure out, it says how much more money than David does Charles have after 1 year? Okay, so my time is 1 year. So we'll start with David and Charles. They start out with the same amount, right? So their principal is the same under both circumstances. The first one is invested at 3.1%. Now, your calculator does not have a percent symbol on it, so how do you type that in the calculator? 0.013 times 1 year. That's going to be the interest that David gets off of his money. So interest for David. Somebody tell me the interest for David. Multiply that into the calculator. How much interest money is David going to get off the $21,000?
$273.
Okay, $273 is how much interest David's going to gain. So he now,
Yeah, it should
Up
be
651.
0.031.
0.0031. So you're right, I wrote it backwards. So I'm sure, yeah, you had the, you did the right thing with the number I put up there. Okay, so 0.031. Sorry about that, guys. 0.031. Multiply that in there, and that gives you 600 and what? 651. Okay, so that's the amount of money David's going to make off of that, okay? Now let's figure out how much money Charles is going to make. Charles starts off with the same principal, $21,000. Interest rate's 5%, so that's 0.05 for 1 year. So how much interest is Charles going to get off of his $21,000? 5%? 21,000 times 0.05, you can ignore the 1 if you want, because multiplying by 1 doesn't change anything. And calculators, what do we got? $1,050. He didn't earn more, just like we expected. So the question is, how much more money than David does Charles have after 1 year? Well, they both are, this guy has 21,651. This guy has 22,050. So I don't even really need to put the 21,000 in there, right? Because that's the same for both. I just need to subtract these two to find the difference, okay? So how much more does Charles have than David? Take 1,050 minus 651. How much do we have? 399. And that is the answer. Everybody okay with that? All right, so Example 11, 2 trucks leave a warehouse at the same time. One travels due west at an average speed of 51 miles per hour, and the other one travels due east at an average speed of 48 miles an hour. After how many hours will the 2 trucks be 495 miles apart? So to get a good sense of what's happening here, let's get 2 people up here to volunteer, and let's get a picture in our minds of what's actually going on. So let me scroll down here a little bit. Okay, so 2 volunteers. Okay, come on up. Copenhagen, who else? One more volunteer. I need you to stand back to back. Don't worry, you don't have to do any math. You're just going to drop it. Just need one person to walk across the room. One person. Come on, thank you, Kira. Okay, I need you to stand back to back, both of you. And so these 2 trucks are leaving the warehouse at the same time, and they're heading in opposite directions, right? Okay, are they going the same speed? They are not going the same speed. So, Kira, I need you to walk slower than Copenhagen. Okay, so Kira's going to walk slow. Copenhagen's going to walk fast, okay? And when I say start, you both go, and then I'll say stop, and you both stop, okay? Go. Stop. Okay, so let's... All right, so does everybody agree that their time is the same? They both traveled for the same amount of time. Right? So the same time, but they have different rates. Do they have different distances? Yes, they do. But the question is, how far apart, how many hours will it be when the 2 trucks are 495? So right now, they are 495 miles apart. Okay? All right, you guys can sit down. So does everybody understand the problem? Because I think when you first read that, nobody really understands it. Okay, so you have to do some things to make yourself visualize what's going on there. All right, so we have our 2 trucks, just to kind of draw a picture here of what they did. Here's the warehouse. One truck went this way. One truck went this way, and one of them went farther than the other, right? And how far is it from here to here?
495.
Okay, so from here to here is 495. All right, so I'm going to call this distance of the westbound, and this one distance of the eastbound. Okay? So from that picture, so in other words, the westbound truck traveled this far, and the eastbound truck traveled this far. Can you write an equation based on the picture that we have there? Could I write an equation based on that picture?
Yes.
Okay, what would it be?
DW
Okay.
plus DE
Uh-huh.
equals 495.
So in other words, if you add this distance and this distance, you get this. Kira's distance plus Copenhagen's distance is equal to 495. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so let's write that equation. Distance of the westbound plus the distance traveled by the eastbound should total up to 495. Okay, well, do you guys remember any formulas from middle school maybe on distance? What's distance equal to?
Oh boy.
Rate? Rate times time, right? If you travel 70 miles per hour for 1 hour, that means you traveled 70 miles. Your rate, your speed times your time equals your distance, right? Providing it's a constant speed. So I could replace distance for the westbound with its rate, the rate or speed, times its time. Now, I'm not going to put a little W on the T because I know the time for both of them is the same. We already established that. When they walked, they started and they stopped at the same time. So the distance for the eastbound, well, that would be the rate of the eastbound times the time of the eastbound, which is the same time for both. So now I have an equation that looks like this. All I'm doing here is replacing distance with rate times time. I replaced this distance with this rate times time. That means rate of eastbound times time. Time is the same for both. That's why I did not put the E and the W here, because time west equals time east. Okay, well, do I have any of this information in the problem?
Yes.
Okay, what do I know?
The rates.
Okay, well, what's the rate of the westbound?
51.
Okay, westbound's 51, so I'm going to replace that with a 51 times t. Rate of the eastbound, 48 times t equals 495. All right, well, maybe I should write it, let's see, 51t plus 48t is equal to 495. What can I do with those t's?
Combined.
Combine them, they're like terms. What's 51 plus 48? 99. So I have 99t equals 495. 495 divided by 99 gives me what? What's that?
5.
So time is 5 hours. And they won't make you type in the hours, you'll just have to put 5 in there. Did I answer the question? After how many hours will the two trucks be 495 miles apart? So they're asking you for time, and that's what we found. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, that's everything on that lesson.